First, before we get started, a real quick round of applause to Florina, to Alex, to Andre, to Yulia for everything that they've done for this conference. So real quick round of applause. I've been doing these for going on 10 years, and about 5 years ago, my wife and I, who own our company, started doing a conference, and you do not realize how much work goes into this. So please give them a lot of attention, a lot of gifts, big hugs, and because they're doing a great job. My name's Dave Cronster. I am from St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. To give you an idea, I've heard about your conference all the way there, 13,000 miles away. We're going to talk a little bit today about social engineering and some of the misconceptions that there are and really how we can handle this and look at psychology and some of the research to get us to understand that this is a problem that everyone will face, and we can't really get away from it. I actually used my Jedi mind power to knock that over right there. So before we get started, a little bit about myself. I am a security practitioner. I am not a researcher. There's a lot of researchers here this week, and that's a good thing. But I run an ethical hacking firm. I do forensic investigations. Everything I'm going to discuss is stuff that I do on a daily basis. And again, I was in IT for a good 15 years before I started Parameter with Renee. And when I got into this, I thought, you have the right technology, you're good to go. And then over the past decade, I've started to realize there's the human factor in this. And that really just changed up the game. So again, we do pen testing, we do all sorts of things. I do not do tech support anymore, so we come in, we say, here's your problems, goodbye, and move on from there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about social engineering. And you've heard this go around throughout today and yesterday. You know, yesterday morning, Jason Street talked a lot about social engineering. And as someone that's been sharing cab rides with him, I can tell you he social engineers free cab rides all the time. There's a lot of misconceptions about social engineering. And this is one of those definitions that you'll see. The clever manipulation, a tendency to trust. What is social engineering? Social engineering is actually hacking the human. Now, you'll go around in our field and you'll see something like this. A good friend of mine, Ralph Echemendia, actually has a patch like this. And, you know, social engineering, because there ain't no patch for human stupidity, right? And we always say that. Well, why did they get in? Because they were stupid. They were absolutely stupid. That's not the case. This is the number one issue we need to stop and think about. Let's put it this way. If it was truly the fact that someone was able to be social engineered because they were stupid, then when myself or someone else came in and did a phishing engagement, if you fell for it, your company should fire you, right? Because you're too stupid. That's the whole reason. No, it's not. We can come in and we can train. And as we're going to see, the reason social engineering works is not because humans are stupid. It's because we're extremely complex. Now, let's go ahead and let's look at how humans are built, designed, evolved, however you want to look at it. Now, we have this one side of us, and we'll use Bill here as an example, a side that's very logical, that we think. We do risk assessments, right? We're going to go out to the street, and there's a garbage truck coming. Do we run across, right? Hopefully you're not bad at that. Which, by the way, you guys have the third world's worst drivers behind Moscow and Florida. It is bad. I am so glad I'm not driving here. You make logical choices. And, you know, this is very Spock-ish, right? You Star Trek fans here? Oh, okay, it's a Star Wars sort of country, I get it. Very Yoda-ish then. we come in and we're able to look at an issue. We're able to reason. It's a very high complex form. And it's something that, until recently, we thought only humans possessed. But the problem lies that we have a second side. We have an emotional side. And this is a lot older, primitive side. Now, it's not very complex. But the problem is that it trumps any rational or logical thoughts you may have. There's a phrase we use in America called knee-jerk reaction. And that's where I wasn't thinking, I just did something, right? Someone called you a name, you punch him. That's a knee-jerk reaction, right? Now the thing is what we have to understand is for social engineering to work, it's very simple. I get you to not think, I get you to feel. If I get you to feel, that emotion overwhelms any logic that you have. And then I'm able to get you to do what I want. You guys may have heard that our country just went through an election, right? Now, I'll be honest, I haven't been through any other country's election, but I can tell you this, no matter who the candidate was, every speech that they gave was not logical plans put out. It was, this is how you should feel. You should feel good about this. You should feel bad about this. Probably your politicians kind of do the same thing here, right? Because you can't, it's easier to get people to get emotionally riled up. In fact, it's amazing in the U.S. there are people pissed off about stuff that they don't even care about. It's because they've been social engineered. You've all been social engineered. There's quite a few guys in here. It's a tech conference. So guys, how many times have you, when you were single, if you're single, you've gone to a bar and there was a beautiful woman or a beautiful guy, or I guess a handsome guy, and you started buying them drinks and you had absolutely no chance with that person, yet you kept buying them drinks, even when their boyfriend showed up. And that year you were getting social engineered. And there's a couple girls around here, I won't mention names, that are giving looks like, yeah, we know what we're doing. My wife has an addiction to handbags. Kate Spade, Ralph Lauren, I buy stock in all of them. She'll come home and she'll say, listen, I saved us money. They were on sale. I bought 3 of them. You're social engineered. This is something that is human nature. Now, it's real easy to go, okay, Dave, it's human nature. There's no problem here. But the big issue that we run into is if we can use this and weaponize this to get past your technical defenses, what are we to do? Well, let's go back and let's look at what some of the researchers say. Now, we'll go back a couple hundred years ago, and a certain gentleman came up with this phrase, Congee ergo sum. Does anybody know what that means? I think, therefore I am. And that was Mr. Rene Descartes. And he actually said, this was the first realization. I think, I'm logical, therefore I am. I'm not just some function just walking around like a plant. I am actually human. And so this is what we have held on to for a couple hundred years. But what we're finding is research says you as a person are not a logical person. Just because you think, that does not make up you. Any Germans in here? All right, I'm German, and I got a really bad German temper, so we feel a lot. This gentleman here, Herbert Simon, this is really where it starts to come into play. Herbert said, listen, this is a whole research piece he did back in the 60s. And really what he wanted to say is that when we want to talk about rational thinking, when we want to discuss how humans react logically, we have to understand what the role emotion plays into it. And really what he was starting to get at is none of us are Spock. Even Spock isn't Spock. Every emotion that you have, he theorized, or every thought that you had, every logical choice that you made has some sort of emotion into it. Now, when we start talking about what kind of emotional triggers can we use to get you to think in a non-productive way, overwhelming, deceptive relationships, moral duties. That original definition that says that I try to get you to trust me is how I social engineer you. My personal experience, I think if you talk to Jason, anybody else that does social engineering, is that's not true. Yeah, if I can get you to trust me, that's good. But if I can get you really pissed at me, really angry, I can also take advantage of that. I mean, it's amazing. Anybody here an internet troll? Man, no one has yet ever raised their hand for that, right? Yeah, there we go, Alex, right there. I'm a troll. I love it. But you get people angry, and you get them to do what you want them to do. When we're social engineering, that's all it really comes down to, is to get people to actually think and get some emotion in there. Now, before we move on, when I was researching this, because again, this is one of those areas where it's still prevalent. People are stupid. It's because humans are stupid. I had a conference I went to a few years ago, and this was full of auditors. This was full of people that do pen testing and all this. And I was doing a different talk about social engineering. And I said, listen, it's not because you're stupid, it's because you're human. And went through this whole thing. The guy after me, the speaker after me, obviously didn't sit in either didn't sit in my talk or was just really like whatever. Because he came in and he said, listen, people get social engineered because they're stupid, because they're idiots. In fact, in my company, he was a CISO, he goes, in my company, anybody that falls for social engineering, I fire. And so afterwards, Renee and I went over and talked to him. I said, that's really interesting. I do pen testing. I said, and we do social engineering. I would love to come and do your social engineering. He goes, that'd be, we could talk about it. I said, I'll do it for free. And he goes, okay. And I go, but you're going to stand by the whole, whoever gets social engineered, you're going to fire. He goes, yeah. I go, so that means if I get you, you're going to resign, correct? And he just walked away, and I never heard back from him. So, we really got to get away from this. Now, while I was doing some of this study, and it's amazing because there's a whole field right now that's talking about emotions, and there's some breakthrough issues. I mean, stuff like post-traumatic stress syndrome, they're actually even saying that some of that is we learn it. And we have certain diseases because we've learned it and because of our emotions. A gentleman by the name of Antonio Damasio, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, he got into this kind of in a weird way. He deals with trauma victims. He's a brain surgeon. And one of the things he started noticing was he would have patients that had frontal lobal damage. Now, your front lobe is where your emotions, where religion, and all of that comes to play. And what he noticed was people that had no function here could not make decisions. Now, it's not like, what do you want to do with your life? It was like, here are 2 exact Diet Cokes, which one do you want? And they could not make a decision at all. And so he started going through and he started realizing that every single decision you make in your life has an emotional aspect to it. Now, we probably know this. Anybody, if you've bought a house, if you've bought a car, I go out and I buy toys, guitars, stuff like that. I try to rationalize it, but at the end of the day, I go, well, do I want it? I want it, right? And I grab it. But from just the minute issues or minute decisions we may have, we still have an emotional aspect to it. So what does that tell us? If we're dealing with social engineering, every single decision, every single aspect of your human in your organization or as you has a vulnerability or exposure to be social engineered. Who here has never been social engineered? Good. I'm glad to see that. There's usually always one in every group. And someone's like, Tony, put down your freaking hand. Okay. All right, so as we go around this now, so what we're going to do is we'll look at a little bit about just what are some of the ways we can kind of get around this, and then in how can we use this to our advantage to social engineer, because really understanding this is great, but what are just some of the little minute things that we could do and to get in there? And then I kind of had a weird epiphany a couple months ago, and we'll talk about how we get past this. So let's talk a little bit about phishing. Now, my experience with social engineering really comes back to my childhood. I have a cop, police officer for a dad, a church secretary for a mom, grandparents that lived next door. I was a middle child, so I had to learn to lie a lot because I was a bad kid. And my parents are proud of me now when I say that, but I had quite a bit of issues growing up. And really, social engineering is a skill. Again, you could talk to Jason, you can talk to some of these other people that deal with this. When someone has a gun like this, and you have to talk your way out of it, it's a bit of a skill set. So how do we get past some of your defenses you have set up? Now again, phishing websites, really easy, right? Real quick, which one's fake? Both are fake. Well, I mean, McDonald's food really isn't real, but that doesn't mean that their food isn't real. The bottom one, right? Now, I'm preaching to the choir here on this, right? When I deal with a lot of organizations, they go, how did that looks so real? I made that, right? I made that, and I can't develop. I developed, the last class I took was Pascal, okay? And that's probably older than some of your parents. So it's been a while since I developed. But what renders a website? Anybody? What renders a website? The browser. So back in the day when we had to pay per minute to get on the internet, we would use an offline browser. That's all I use. Now, someone who said that this was, the bottom one was fake, what made you realize that? The file, the URL. Yeah, that's good. You think your end user is going to see that? Maybe, maybe not. Now I got 3 domains here. Which one of these is fake? And by the way, that bottom one that was supposed to say entry ls, it kind of looks like entrails, which is kind of the guts of an animal in English. I've never been able to eat McDonald's after that. Which one of these is not a McDonald's domain? 1 and 3. Why not? Just one. No, just 3. This is why I love doing the after lunch. Everybody's food is going in it. 1 and 3. Does anybody disagree with them? Yes. You disagree?
I agree.
You agree? Man, I was like, okay, we're going to fight this out. Figure out. Why is 1 and 3 fake? The top level domain, right? Our languages, most human languages, read left to right. Not all of them, but domains read right to left, right? Now the thing is really when you look at the top and the bottom one, that's a domain of mks.info. That's a domain of entryls.com. With the subdomains of nutrition, subdomain menus, subdomain com, subdomain McDonald's, subdomain www. Do you think that gets past the phishing filter, spam filter? Why does it get past the spam filter? If I tell you I am sending you to this domain and I send you to this domain, your spam filter will let me through. Now, how many of you honestly think that you would catch that each and every time? You do? You do. I want to hire you so I can just have you there on the side and feed you URLs. I mean, here's the fact. We're in a hacking conference. We're all information security specialists. But I can tell you, your mind will play illusions on you. It's that whole thing of you will actually see slashes there. And again, do we teach our employees this? How do we get past this? I've gone into places where IT people are going, well, no, that's not true. It's McDonald's.com. And I'm like, dude, you're their DNS administrator. Don't you understand this? We use this a lot because, number one, I'm too cheap to buy URLs all the time. But the other aspect is as long as I'm not lying to your spam filter, it's going to go right through. There's absolutely no problems. And again, you can even encode this if you want to make it even a little crazier, but as long as I'm telling the truth to your spam filter, I'm good to go. Now, this is a real email, right? Me and Bill Gates eat cupcakes and beer. Just disgusting. We all know that email can be spoofed. It's easy, right? Has anybody here manually ever spoofed an email with Telnet, SMTP? Okay, port 25. Now, one of the things I want to explain to you is most people understand externally I can spoof an email from an external organization to an internal organization. However, and I know you're going to disagree with me on this, but just trust me on this. There is a vulnerability or a flaw in the logic of the protocol of SMTP, which will allow me to send an email from the outside from an internal employee to another internal employee, and your spam filter will not catch it. You don't believe me, do you? You don't believe me? Let me show you exactly how we do it. When you connect to a mail server, you say hello because you're polite and your mom always told you to say hello. Afterwards, you say who the email's from. Now, we all know that if I'm trying to send something to say parameter, if I say it's from parameter, it's going to say, nope, I'm parameter's email. So I'll say, well, I'm Bill from Microsoft.com. Okay? And then who do I want to send it to? So in this one, I have SecureTech, one of our fake domains. I want to send it to Dave at securetech.com. And they go, yeah, that's fine. Now, after that, you're going to see I get into this data aspect of it. This is the message. Do you see what's after that? I have the subject, I have the to, I have the from. If I have the to, the from, the subject, and the date in the data portion of it, that's what Outlook is going to actually show. That's what every single email client is going to show. And we should know that this is the case because most of our companies use mass marketing email companies that send them from an internal standpoint. Now remember, right here is not looked at by the spam filter. And oh yeah, you can see it from the message header, but how many people actually look at every message header from every email they actually see? You gonna raise your hand?
Well, I was going to drop you off below.
You won't drop me. DKIM, nothing of that. None of that will work. No.
I will drop you at hello because you're not saying who you are.
No, I do. I say who I am. I say I'm Bill from Microsoft.com.
Hello and your name.
Okay, then I'll say hello at my name. It doesn't matter.
And then if you're saying hello in your name and your mailing doesn't, your destination doesn't meet the domain you're sending from, I will drop you by the checks of.
So that's a good point. My domain does not meet what I say I'm from. Well, then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a reverse DNS lookup, a pointer record that points to my right. Trust me on this. We'll talk afterwards.
Both ways,
Yeah.
not only reverse.
What? Go ahead. Go ahead.
You need to have them both ways. Doesn't work. You have to have both forward and reverse. Sorry.
Sure.
Reverse isn't enough.
So, okay.
Well, I'll still drop you.
No, you won't.
Try me.
That's a challenge. Understand what's happening here.
Yeah, I do.
What's your name?
Adrian.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Every Adrian's problems, aren't they? Every Adrian we know. Adrian, so let's say we have Adrian.com. But I'm going to spoof. I'm trying to get into secure tech. Or I'm trying to get into Adrian.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up DNS for chronister.org. I'll have reverse DNS. I'll have all that. Right? I'll have my forward DNS. When I go to hello, I'll say mail is from Dave at chronister.org. What's your mail server going to do?
I'm going to present myself.
You're going to accept it, right? Because I say I'm from Dave at chronister.org.
So far, so good.
And you're going to accept it. That was so weird because I swore you just said something and it didn't even say. Anyway, I get down into my data. Down here, I change it.
Okay. And?
And I say I am from Dave at Adrian.com. I've passed any of your reverse lookups. I've passed DKIM. I've passed all of that. This is in the message. Trust me, we do this on a daily basis. But this is one of those areas that most people don't think of. And we'll talk afterwards. We'll geek out a little bit about this. All right? So, as we go through this, I mean, again, from an emotional standpoint, if I'm able to come in as the boss and I'm able to say, hey, I need you to go look at this website. What kind of chance do you what's your emotional thought there? Yeah, the boss wants me to do it. It may be joy, it may be anger. Either way, you're going to check it. So I've really kind of been thinking about how do we get more successful security awareness training? Because the simple fact is again, everything has to do with emotion. There is no way really for us just to logically explain this to people and hope that it sticks. This little creature right here helped me. This is Molly. Oh. Molly's one of my little girls. She is, anybody here have a beagle? She's a beagle. Okay, for those of you that don't have beagles, understand that beagles are nothing more than stomachs with tails and ears. She's actually a beagle Dalmatian. Kind of looks like Snoopy. She is the sweetest dog you'll ever meet. Except at 5:30 every morning and at 5:30 every night, she comes running in and starts barking. And keeps barking, and he keeps barking until I get up, I go downstairs, she's barking the entire way, take her outside and feed her. Once she's done being fed, she barks at the other dog until she's done being fed, and then once everybody's awake, she lays back down. Now, as she's been getting older, she's about 13 years old now. She's a stray, so we don't really know her age. But as she's been getting older, she's been getting ornerier. I mean, she has learned to open up her food at our office. They come to work with us. Everybody's trash cans are up. In fact, she's learned how to open up the refrigerator. She's a smart dog, and it's really bad. But the one thing I've found myself doing is if I pick up Molly, she quits barking in the morning. So now, One morning, I realized that I'm waking up at 5:15 every morning to pick her up, to take her down, to carry her downstairs so she can go pee, and then she can eat, and we can all have a happy, happy time. And I realized this dog just trained me. She's trained me. And I started looking up about, can a dog train a human? And it can. We've heard of Pavlov, but the dog, he even said, listen, I've successfully conditioned him to smile every time I drooled. What we have to realize is we need to stop trying to enlighten our employees of what could happen. We need to condition them on what will happen. If you think about it, and this is one of those areas I was actually emailing people because I was trying to figure out, are habits emotions or are habits logic? And there's absolutely nothing out there about that. But I kind of think that they fall more on the emotion side, kind of right in the middle there. Because most habits you have, you don't have to logically think about, you just do. And has anybody ever had a habit that maybe once they don't do it, they really have emotional backlash about it? I'm not talking about smoking, which, by the way, quit smoking. I love you guys, man, but too many people here smoke. Going to the gym, that's a good habit, right? Does anybody feel bad when they don't? I'm talking a bunch of geeks. They're like, we've seen them on TV. If we can start to condition our employees, we can actually use this as a way to defeat social engineering. Now, what do we have to do? Our social engineering program has to be ongoing. I'm an auditor. I say this all the time. But let's face it, if I come to you, or if you go to your employees once a year and gripe about the stuff they do that pisses you off, or even if you have a decent security awareness training, they're going to forget it in just a little while. What if you're hammering them every quarter, every month, about the same thing over and over and over? When I worked at a bank before I started this company, one of the biggest issues I had was trying to get people to lock their workstations. It was out in the country. It was a weird bank. And I would go upstairs at 3 p.m. It's banker's hours. They work 9 to 3. And I worked more than anybody else. I worked 15 minutes longer. And I would go up, and what I started to do is I started putting Tootsie Rolls on everybody's keyboard that locked their workstation. Now, here's the thing. It started catching on, and in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, everybody was locking their keyboard. And they were getting excited about seeing these Tootsie Rolls. Now, let me just bring you in on one little other fact here. We were a bank that bought about 400 pounds of Tootsie Rolls a month. Everybody had a can of them on their desk. It wasn't that they liked the Tootsie Rolls. I mean, they probably did, but they liked the fact that they had a Tootsie Roll on it. To the point that there were people that at this point, when they would start to walk away, I actually saw people going back going, crap, I forgot to lock my workstation. They were conditioned to do that. We need to start conditioning them. We need to make sure that this becomes second nature. If someone has to think, we're not going to be successful, because again, what am I going to do? I'm going to get them to feel. And so no matter what logic you put in there, I'm going to override it with emotion. But if you make it second nature, if you get it where they do stuff without even thinking about it, not opening that email, forwarding everything to help desk, if you encourage a culture like that, you're going to have a lower risk. Listen, humans will fail. We all do. None of us are perfect. I fall for social engineering all the time. I watch too much late night TV. I have the Ginsu eyes and everything. But we need to learn from this. We need to, unlike that one gentleman who has the culture of, you screw up, I'm going to fire you because you're dumb, we need to understand that we are human beings, and that as human beings we will make mistakes, and that we need to learn from these mistakes. Now, what are some of the things that we can do as we go through this? You know, I could tell you someone that does physical and online social engineering. You know, I don't know if Jason said it here. I see his talk so many times, but he says it's a good chance to be rude. You said that yesterday, and I disagree. Being rude's not bad, but you can even do it even better. You can teach your people to be friendly while being rude to us, the evil people. You see me walking down the hallway, what are you going to do? Nothing. But why don't you come up and say, hey, can I help you? And at that point, I don't like that as a social engineer. I'm like, oh, I'm just heading over to Bill's office, whatever. I'm going that way, I'll take you there. Oh, red flag for me right now, right? I don't want to see Bill. I don't want to be by Bill. Now you're taking me to Bill. Now that's the point where do I just run? Do I tackle you? That's not in my engagement letter, so I may get in trouble. Or do I just go in and I go, you got me. Good job, people. You know, teach your people to do that. Teach people to reply to emails. Explain to them when emails addresses don't look correct, don't reply. But again, even spoofing, like I showed the email, if you use the correct email, spoofing's one way. It's going to go back to the boss. So why don't you just reply back something along the lines of, you know, the boss sends you an email, go to this website, okay, reply back, I'm right on it. Your boss comes running out of their office, stop, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You know, you've taught them a good way of dealing with it. Or if the website's wrong, we stop it. So that's my spiel. Again, I really just want to put down just a few more points as we leave. And this is one of those areas, technology is important, all right? I've been doing this a long time now, and I've really realized that without good policy and without good people, your technology means nothing. And these are going to be your biggest assets or your worst enemies. So again, remember, social engineering happens because we're human. It's emotion. It's not because we're stupid. We as an industry need to stop that. Because as an industry, it, number one, makes us look like what we would say in English, assholes. And two, it's just not true. And it really starts to shame people. And you go, well, what's the big deal? Guess what happens if you have that attitude and someone in your organization realizes they were social engineered? They're going to stay quiet. They're going to stay real quiet. I had an incident response I dealt with earlier this year. It was big. The company lost, the day that they notified about the breach, they lost something like $7 million on the stock exchange. And the whole time, the person that actually caused the issue was part of the incident response team on that company that I worked with for over a month, but he was too ashamed to say anything. He didn't tell us anything until he finally realized the jig was up. Problem is we could have mitigated and stopped a lot of the issues there. All of us are vulnerable to social engineering. One of the things I run into is with companies, when I'll sit in on the kickoff calls, and if it's the CISO, if it's the CIO, CIEIO, you know, the whole McDonald name farm, whoever it is, if they're like, we want to see what people are idiots in our organization, I'm going to target them. Because for some reason, when it's the CEO, it becomes a lesson, right? It's a lesson learned. Everybody else, well, they're just idiots. We have to realize everybody can deal with it. The social engineering attacks are going to be very subtle. So again, we're talking about the psychology. I showed you some of these, and trust me, these work. I see them all the time. I see very smart people do some stuff that isn't normally plausible that they would do just because it's so subtle, all right? But again, if you have that second defense of, hey, something doesn't look right, knock it out, give it a second chance, you're good. Your users are going to be the only things that stop it. Again, one of the things we should know as hackers and as INFOSEC people is there's no silver bullet to stop everything, right? There is always going to be some sort of limitation, and the attackers will figure out a way around it. We have to make sure that we are in a position that our users are our best friends. I've been caught twice going on site. The first time was a small company, it was a small bank in a city in northwest Missouri of 400 people. I went as the power guy, from the utility company. I didn't realize that there's one guy in the whole city that does the utility work, and his wife works at the bank. So they caught me. In fact, but they waited till I was leaving before they caught me. And I'm like, I just got in my car and left. The second time was I sat down at a hospital at an empty chair, and the girl next to the desk called the woman at that desk. And interestingly enough, that was the wife of the CISO who hired us to do the engagement that knew we were going to be there. And so when the lady called, it was like, well, I just talked to the guy, no problem.